everybody, and welcome to Mom Cooks Fast and Slow. I'm Alex Sullivan, and I'm delighted to have you at my kitchen table. Today, I have Tommy Gamba with me, who is the COO and Co Founder of a media tech company called Stacker. Tommy also happens to be my longtime friend of 17 years and more recently earned the title of my brother-in-law. Given the economic and political climate around the tech industry, I thought it would be interesting to have him talk a bit about the evolution of tech in the millennial age, the path of a tech entrepreneur, what we should fear and also be excited about in AI, and any advice he had for kids who want to go into tech. Our lives and our kids' lives are being shaped by tech every day, and it's invaluable for parents to understand it as best we can, especially when we are not in the industry ourselves. So I hope you find this conversation as interesting as I did, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, Tommy. Welcome to Mom Cooks Fast and Slow.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on. I actually just last week did an interview with a parent coach and we got into social media. So I thought it would be a nice way to counterbalance the mom feelings against social media and tech with someone that I love and respect that works in the tech industry, to kind of chat about all the new things about tech, the good things about tech, and then kind of the precipice we find ourselves on today. But first, for the fun of it, I thought we would talk about how you and I met and how we are related. So I'm going to let you tell the story because I always tell it because I find myself hilarious when I tell it, but I'm going to let you take the reins and tell it this time.
Okay. As you always say, it's a real crowd pleaser, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you really turn back the clock, we met in college. I believe our parents introduced us at a Whole Foods at Duke.
No, actually, we met. I have to go
Okay.
back up further than that. See, now I'm already interrupting you. But we met in theater class on the first day of classes. You and I took a theater class together because while I was a math sales and traders on Wall Street, and you are now a tech badass in the tech world, we're both major theater kids at
That's true.
heart. And
Theater
so
nerds.
we met there.
We met
Yeah,
there.
theater
We were too
nerds.
nervous to, become friends. So our parents had to, destroy the boundaries and grease the wheels. But yeah, in college, you and I were, best friends. You probably, keep me straight for most of the years. And then I married your sister, and I think that's the story, right? So, and I think that's where it ends.
Yeah.
There's not much more. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. We can leave it at
Yeah.
that. I will say that I'm very glad that my sister was of age when you started dating her.
And it
And
was,
yes, no, it was always, we were brother and sister for a very long time in college. And then by you marrying my sister, we made it official.
yeah.
So that was really
Now you're
nice.
stuck with me.
Um,
So
and now I'm stuck with you, my tech Tom best friend, brother-in-law. Um, so, all right. So I wanted to introduce you to the audience, talk to us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your path to becoming, you are now the COO and co-founder of a company called Stacker. And so if you could talk about, how you got there and what your company does and what you currently do in the tech world.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it. I'm COO and co-founder for a small tech-enabled media business called Stacker. We operate at sort of the intersection of technology and media. We're trying to build kind of the world's largest storytelling platform by partnering with brands to fund and underwrite content that we distribute out on a network to thousands of publishers. So local papers, national news outlets, we provide them with sort of free storytelling by partnering with brands who want to, generate earned media and distribution at scale. So, kind of like a marketing business that operates in the media space. But yeah, my journey here was not anything but straight. It's funny if you kind of like look back in time. My parents probably always said I was going to be like an entrepreneur. I was starting lemonade stands, mowing lawns. When I was 14, I got a job immediately bagging groceries. I worked at Blockbuster. I started my own film company in college. Like I was always just trying to make a buck left and right, and always just sort of starting little hustles on the side, where I could. But it wasn't really clear to me. I grew up in a house of doctors and nurses. My dad is a radiologist. My mom is a nurse. Both my sisters went into the medical field, and so I just always thought that I was going to end up in medicine. When I was at Duke, I was pre med with 50% of everyone else who went to Duke. And it just sort of kind of felt like that was my journey. And about halfway through college, I remember having this moment where I was like taking organic chemistry, and I was like, I don't think I've taken a single science class that I've enjoyed while being here. And I'm like, that might be a problem if I'm going to be, studying this for the rest of my life and like building a profession around being a doctor. If I was even fortunate to make it that far. So I remember kind of having like this light bulb moment thinking, hey, I should maybe have a backup plan, or maybe I should start looking for something else to do. And I was really fortunate. It was kind of like when tech was just starting to get, I think, popular and interesting. It was like 07, 08. And I like stumbled upon an internship at Google. I remember applying to it just sort of as a flyer, and ended up getting accepted to kind of join them for the summer. It was actually between my sophomore and junior year. And I went out there for the summer, went to San Francisco, and I just like had this incredible summer. And it was, part, I think, working in tech at a point where it was really growing, very quickly. Google had actually just bought YouTube, so I got staffed on like, a bunch of YouTube projects for the summer. There was free food left and right. I remember there was like an Odwalla juice fridge you could just like go up and like grab a juice out of, and I was like blown away at these like the perks. And I ended up walking away that summer being like, this felt really right. This was like something really exciting, and in a space that I think I could build a career, and it was something I really wanted to do. So,
I'm actually going to stop you right
yeah,
there because it's funny. I actually, that summer, I was also in the city, I believe. Oh, no, that was the following
yep,
summer. But the following summer, I remember you taking me around to Google because you worked in Google in New York City, and you were like showing me all of like the cool stuff and the free stuff and everything you were getting there. And I was going into, sales and trading, commodities on Wall Street. And I remember thinking, well, the first thought I had, because you know who I am, but the first thought I had was like, man, these are a bunch of soft pansies walking around getting their free food. But the other part of me was like, they're going to take a lot of talent from the banks, because if this is the, place you're going to walk into every day and work and, have this experience versus what I was doing 16-hour days, getting treated mostly like garbage on Wall Street. It was kind of like an eye-opening experience of like, this is going to take a lot of talent out of top tier schools because of this kind of new way of having people work and the tech industry. And like you said, like it was '08, it was right around um, the economy blowing up, and people were looking for a better way, a different path. And, I think we were like in the crux of that. So I just wanted to kind of note that, how like sliding doors of those paths and how you found yourself kind of in that crux.
totally. And it was, yeah. I mean, I think it's easy to look back now and be like, oh yeah, like Google. Of course it was going to become like, I mean, at the time it was a very successful company, but the whole trend of tech moving in that direction, I think Google was one of the first businesses that was really getting into the benefits war, right? Which was effectively a talent war, right? Where all of these tech companies have really been leveling up the benefits that they provide employees as a way to acquire the top talent. And so tech has kind of, they're having their little bit of a reckoning now, a little bit on that end. But, for years it was really, who could offer the best benefits, the best food, the best, paternity leave, the best, PTO policies, everything as a way to acquire talent. And whether that be within tech, or for people outside of tech. But yeah, I mean, it was for a kid in college, it was like the most incredible place to work, for the summers. I think I probably took you to like the 6 different, food places to eat at Google's campus, just like popping around having meals and taking stuff from the micro kitchens when I left work at like 4 o'clock. So it was a good summer. And then, yeah, I mean, when I was graduating, I made it a little harder on myself because I remember thinking, I'm graduating with like a history major, like a degree, like a liberal arts degree. And I just felt like I wasn't really totally prepared to work in the business world. Like I didn't feel like I had like an MBA. I know we always joke about it at Duke. Like I think we all took like one corporate finance class. Like there was no way to get a business degree there. And so I decided to take a job in consulting out of college, and that was intentional because I felt like I needed to just become a little bit more well rounded. And if I wanted to build a career in technology, it felt like I needed to have a little bit more of a more broader skill set. And so I spent 2 years working in strategy consulting in New York City at Deloitte, and I really didn't enjoy it at all. But it was very formative for me, and I think I learned everything from like how to build a financial model to how to put together a storyboard for a presentation and tell sort of pitch compelling ideas and perspectives and do research. And like at Google, while it was like an incredibly rewarding summer, it was just more around like how to sell advertising, right? And so I just felt like it was a little bit more myopic in that sense. And so did that for 2 years. Absolutely hated it, but it was great because it really built the foundation for me that I felt like set me up for my next move, which was joining a really sort of early stage venture backed business that was based in California. And I joined when it was like a 10-person startup. Over the next 5 years, we grew to become 150 people and had a small exit to Amazon. And that was like a really rewarding and amazing journey within the tech space because it was just so fast moving. I learned. I got to do so many different things. I think I had like 6 different jobs while that company was scaling up. Got to kind of go through the fundraising process, the highs and lows of being an early stage employee. And I think that was kind of when I really got hooked officially. I was like, this is where I want to be. This is like, it felt really like, the highlights of what was already, I mean, I guess was an early career, but it felt like, these are the types of things I want to continue to do.
And that was with Find the
That was with
Best,
Find the
right?
Best, became graphic.
Yeah.
And then, eventually, end up getting rolled up into Amazon. And so, coming out of that, I decided to go like a little bit to a bigger business. So I ended up spending some time at Hotel Tonight, where I ran global sales for them, and was focused on sort of like hotel acquisition for the platform and for the marketplace. And then that company ended up getting acquired by Airbnb, and so I was kind of fortunate to kind of go through that journey. But I think it was at that time that I realized that I was like, it's time for me to kind of go do my own thing, and I wanted to be an operator, be a founder, start something from scratch, and kind of go, have that experience on not on my resume, but as sort of like the thing that I, wanted to start to build around. And so that was kind of when I, started really focusing full time on Stacker. And, at the time was a small business. We had like 5 or 10 employees, and we're really kind of focused on, specifically like a really limited use case. It was kind of more, providing content and doing sort of revenue share agreements with a small subset of
Can I
publishers. Oh yeah.
can I actually back you up a bit because I find that every time I hear someone talk about like a small thing that they then grew into a business, they gloss over the part that I find most interesting and that I want to hear more about from you, because I even feel like you yourself don't even give yourself the credit or the due in talking about the early stages. So could you talk about how like the original idea of Stacker came about, how you found your co-founders, what that process looked like? I feel like so many young kids are like want to follow the path you have, but that initial like spark and that initial part of that grunt work and hard part of it, you like kind of black out. Like I kind of think about it as like pregnancy. Like you like go through the labor and it's like half of like the thing that's so traumatic, and then no one ever talks about it. You just like kind of like, oh yeah, and then I had the baby. And so if you could, talk about that part of it a little bit.
Totally. Um, and there's so many like different founder journeys, right? Sometimes people will say they met their co-founder, and that was sort of how they decided to start a company, or they had this incredible idea in their sleep and then they end up starting a company around it. But um, my journey was, Graphic had a few different business lines that we were operating when we got acquired. And so when Amazon, made the acquisition, it was primarily to roll up a lot of our technology and capabilities into their platform, into like actually it was like Alexa search. And so they actually sort of sunset and shut down a lot of the business lines that they had. And so we had a pretty sizable and thriving publishing arm at Graphic, where we were providing sort of technology, software, and data to a bunch of media customers. And so there was sort of like this light bulb moment of like, okay, well, hey, there's a multi-million dollar, business unit that Amazon just sort of walked away from. There has to be an opportunity for us to kind of go back and sort of take advantage of that sort of that empty space that was sort of like left behind when the acquisition occurred. And so that was really how we started Stacker, which was specifically to kind of rebuild a different version of what we had operated at Graphic. Graphic was very focused on almost providing simplest like Shutterstock or Getty Images for charts and graphs. We were like this graphing platform. And so we're like, hey, media publishers, they want data-driven content. What if we provided it to them in full form editorial versus charts and graphs? I'm sure it would serve the same use case. It would inform their readers. It would be engaging content. And we think that there's an opportunity that they'll either pay for it, or we can sort of build a sort of a marketplace on top of that. And so that was what really led us to start Stacker, which was sort of pursuing what we thought was like a little bit of a gap in the market. And my co-founders were actually people that I had worked with at Graphic, so who knew the space really well. We were really confident we could execute, and so it wasn't it's a little bit of a shortcut, because I think in a sense like there was a real path to how we could sort of execute. And it's one of the reasons that we ended up bootstrapping the company, which is also a unique component of Stacker versus a lot of
What what
sorry.
what is bootstrapping?
Sorry, yeah, bootstrapping meaning that like we self-funded the company, right? So rather than going sort of a venture-backed route, so we knew that there was like a path to making the business profitable within 6 months to a year, and we felt like if we couldn't execute on that, then maybe it wasn't something that we wanted to raise money around. So we ended up basically all writing our own checks into the business and sort of building around that, and then kind of growing really sustainably over time. So we use sort of cash flows and profits to grow the company, which is I think very distinct within the tech environment, where you tend to see a lot more venture-backed businesses not focus on sort of profitability or sort of unit economics until later in their journey. They're much more focused on growth and sort of achieving asymmetric outcomes, right? And so most venture investors are like kind of looking for these sort of extreme power law dynamics, where you invest 100 companies and only one of those companies might return the entire portfolio kind of approach. So but all that being said, that was sort of the journey for us. And so Stacker kind of just continued to grow from there. And it was I think we're almost 6 years now into building the business. We're almost 50 employees, so it's been a kind of a slow grind, but it's been incredibly rewarding. And I think one of the things that I find to be one of the hardest, most challenging, but kind of best experiences that I've had to date in my career. So
I mean, it's so interesting your path, because I feel like you, again, like we kind of hit that like perfect moment of when tech started super scrappy. And now we sit here today and tech is, I mean, it's like the largest corporations in America that are now tech companies. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the change from when you kind of started out in its like scrappy era to how it's now become like it's I mean I kind of feel like now you're JP Morgan and right, like what does that feel like starting as this scrappy industry to now being like a giant industry in the US conversation and in providing jobs, and what does that kind of look like from the '08 to 2023?
it's funny, if you'd asked me this question a year ago, when we were at the real top of the hill, I would have said tech is having its shining moment, and we're a little bit battered right now as an industry. I'm sure if you read some of the headlines, but But yeah, the changes from, I mean, '08 to today have been, I mean, pretty remarkable. I remember when I, worked when I was doing my internship, and you had the career fair at Duke. I don't think there was a single tech company that was on campus that was recruiting at the time. Maybe Google was there, like, right before our senior years, but it really wasn't a popular career path. There weren't a lot of opportunities, sort of, how to move directly from college into tech wasn't really a common a common path for a lot of people who we went to undergrad with. And I think that that's changed dramatically over the last 15 years. I'd say.
And has that changed because tech used to be you were a coder or you were a founder and that was pretty much it? And now there's like so much more that is involved in it. Like now you can be a marketer and work for a tech company, whereas I feel like in '08 that wasn't the case. Is that part of it?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think there's just like, there's just significantly more businesses that are operating. I think that the war for talent over time has led people to a little bit more of a grassroots approach, and getting smart people out of school is a great sort of feeder system. At Graphic specifically, we took that approach because it was really hard to compete for talent. At sort of people later in their career. So we recognized that we could go on campus. We were actually doing Duke career fairs at 2012 and 2013, and sort of being early on the stage allowed us to get some really fantastic people that were just early in their career and they needed sort of time to develop, but were more than capable. And so I think it's a component of just there being more businesses, and I think also just the popularity of tech in general, right? Like I think it's just a much more visible industry. There was a time where I feel like it's changed a little bit, but like tech founders were like the heroes. They were like celebrities, right? That everybody wanted to be like. And I think that there was a real interest for people to get into that space to, maybe A, make a lot of money, but B, also just, it was a fun sort of laid back industry, or it seemed laid back, right? Work hard, play hard industry to go start a career in. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a little multifaceted, but it really has, to your point, changed so much. And I think that I'd be interested to look at the numbers now, but I imagine that the percentage of people going into tech consulting and like finance from Duke is like probably all equal ish now today.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just really crazy to watch it from afar and then have someone like you in my life that's like really been in it just grow through the industry. So I find it fascinating and also always find myself confused and looking to our favorite podcast All In to explain to me what exactly it is you do. But so now speaking of the evolution of tech and how from '08 to today it's changed. I mean, also, we could go all the way back to, Microsoft and all of that. But in terms of like millennials and kind of the crowd that we're talking to, it really started in '08 and now we're here today. And now I find myself on another precipice of tech that I'm worried about as a mom, and as certainly someone sitting in society. AI. AI is now like the next big thing in tech. And I see it just on a level with kids at school. Our schools are already talking about how they're going to figure out chat gpt because kids can now cheat super easily writing essays with chat gpt, and there are schools that are now trying to integrate, okay, we know chat gpt is available, so how do we use it as like now the TI-83 calculator? I mean, I constantly hear that metaphor or simile or whatever, saying ChatGPT is basically the next TI-83 calculator. So we're going to be able to do so much more stuff as a result of it, but it's going to make everything easier. You don't have to do math in your head anymore. You can use the calculator. You don't have to write the essay anymore. ChatGPT will write it for you, and then you can edit it. So I wanted to get your thoughts on, I guess, a twofold question. Your thoughts on artificial intelligence and kind of how you see that shaping tech in the future, and from your perspective as a founder, and how you operate businesses, and then also how you have a little baby right now, but your thoughts on it shaping kind of our kids.
Yeah, it's funny. I think as like, as you call me Tech Tom, I'm probably the most qualified person to answer this question. But like in my industry, I feel like I'm like one of the least qualified people to answer the sort of AI, path question. But I'll do my best. And I think, having been in tech for I guess 15 years now, you tend to see certain trends, right? I've seen social playthrough. I've seen mobile playthrough. I see, cryptocurrency. I saw, direct to consumer brands, and so I think, certainly this moment feels, very significant. It feels like like a massive platform shift, and one where, you're seeing a ton of investment dollars and a ton of, fantastic talent sort of gravitate towards that industry. And, I think that it is going to, reshape a lot of industries, a lot of professions, and certainly the ways that kids, to your point, in terms of like education and the ways that sort of have to kind of like rework and relearn things. I am, I guess like I'm still not in a place where I think I can accurately predict all of the use cases. What I will say is that like I haven't, as somebody who's like been testing the platforms in a lot of different ways, there's not like any specific consumer applications yet that have like blown me away, and I'm sure that over time, we will see that where AI is going to be introduced and integrated into a lot of the different things that we use on a daily basis, whether that's your iPhone to your, Alexa speaker to your computer. It still feels a little bit like kind of like that parlor trick when you're using it for like consumer, like, oh, like, what's the best restaurant to go to, or, give me a recipe for, this type of thing. They're cool, but I haven't seen like consistent usage of those things being like sort of built into the daily life yet. Where I am like massively impressed, and where I think that there is going to be a ton of momentum in the near term, is on the sort of like the sort of enterprise B2B side, these sort of really specific use cases where AI has been being applied to specific, to like specific functions. So copywriting, design, legal, financial modeling, presentation building, where AI is being sort of trained and deployed for like very specific instances. It's been really remarkable to see like how much faster we're able to get things done, and how close they're able to get it to like a final product that can then be reviewed by a human, and then what maybe took a week is being done in a day. And so as an operator and as like a founder, like that concept is just like it's an incredible amount of leverage, in terms of like the amount of time and the ability to like execute on things, and like not only that, but like just a cost savings perspective. Like the other day I was in a sort of legal dispute with a customer on like collections. I used the tool to write an angry email saying that we needed to collect the money on time, and then I used the chat GPT to put together a quick legal document that signed to as a sort of release on the amount that was owed between us and the customer. And I was able to do that without having to pay anyone. And so normally that would have been hours of legal work, or even like a collections industry. And, and so I think that those types of use cases are like truly, truly exciting, specifically for a founder. And, whether you're a late stage founder, an early stage founder, like, you can imagine now, there's sort of AIs that will like build websites for you quickly, right? That will write blog posts for you. And so like, the whole solo entrepreneur, people being able to start their own companies is just becoming even that much easier than it was a few years ago. So, obviously, like I'm incredibly excited about it. I'm also like a little terrified because it's probably coming from my job to a degree and a lot of other people's. But I do tend to lean in on the concept that like, that like these types of productivity and efficiency gains will lead to economic prosperity, and that like things will work themselves out. There will be new jobs that will be created. There will be new roles for people over time. You've already seen this sort of like prompt engineers, so people that can like write prompts for chat gpt are like becoming like really sought after talent. There's like a whole new sort of category of sort of roles being introduced. So that's it on the sort of founder journey, or sort of founder, operator side. I would say I haven't put as much thought into how this is going to like impact education, or raising children. I do think that you're going to see a lot of you're already seeing it a lot, right? Where ChatGPT is being used to write essays, to do homework, to cheat. I think that's like the scary part. I think on the same end, you're going to see it accelerate learning, hopefully in some cases, right? And introduce new ways for people to maybe learn newer, more complex ideas, or learn things more quickly. So I'm like hopeful that it figure itself out, but I think that there's going to be like a pretty steep learning curve here as like schools and educational providers like learn how to sort of navigate the waters, whether it's like introducing it into the expectations on how you do work, or ways of like monitoring, when it's being used inappropriately. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like my like biggest worry is I feel like we still haven't wrapped our arms around social media and how that's totally changed the landscape for our kids, and now we're just adding another
Yeah.
layer onto it. Um so that's like my biggest, like I get from the like nerdy side of me, I get really excited about AI because like you said, I've walked through some of these people's prompts where I mean, it basically looks like a teacher giving someone like an outline of what they want them to discover. And then that outline then produces like what ChatGPT can like draw up. Um, and it's very interesting from like a super smart person will be able to come up with prompts that produce things that might not necessarily have been produced if you were just thinking it out of your brain and then putting it on paper. Like the act of prompting something to produce something you want actually might give us even more of an interesting kind of output than originally would have been thought. Um, but yes, the things like deep fakes and I still don't use Alexa because I have like a tinfoil hat on that makes me nervous and someone's listening in on me. So this is going to be even harder for me to get used to. But yeah, those are the things I'm worried about. But I am excited about, you know, the innovation that can come out of it. But yeah, interesting to hear your perspective from kind of I wasn't thinking about it from the easy kind of legal and back to back kind of space that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm
Have
like blown away by every day by the things I'm seeing on Twitter of like, the new legal AI company or the new, financial modeling AI business, that are, you can go in now and you can, I mean, you probably would love this when you were working in banking, but you can type in like just freeform text, like what type of Excel function you wanted to create, and it will just write the entire Excel function for you just from sort of free text. Like, so those types of things, which might take in hours of research or to execute, just like, I don't know. It brings a lot of speed, to sort of like daily working life, which is I think exciting. But then what becomes my job over time? I don't know. I heard about
yeah,
like like a Chinese company that has like an AI CEO and it's like beating the market, and so I'm like, oh my god, like if that's happening, like what's
yeah,
next? So
it's coming for all of us.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe everyone's gonna have to be mom cooks fastest phone to
yeah.
talk to each other. We're gonna
I
have to, we're
don't.
gonna have to go back to talking to each other. um. Okay. Wait. So, worst case scenario, what movie do we turn into? Matrix, Ex Machina, Ready Player One. Like, what is your? Which is like funny that I'm asking this question because Matrix is probably my favorite movie of all time. So, but now that I think it might come true, I'm like, oh no.
Oh man. I mean, it's maybe it's like Space Odyssey 2001, or like AI kind of tries to destroy humans, or I think you mentioned Her, maybe, right? People falling in
Yeah.
love with AIs. Like there's you can have like full characters created now that you can kind of respond and have conversations with. So it feels like there's a lot of different ways for this to play out.
To go
Yeah,
sideways.
hopefully not the world ending version,
Right.
but yeah, there's a lot of different of these movies that might end up being might be true in the next couple of 10 years. So
All right. Well, on a more positive note, for parents of kids that want to get into the tech industry, or if a kid is listening right now, what is your best advice to someone that is starting out in the tech industry, wants to get involved in the tech industry? I mean, I used to think, oh, my kid should do coding and then they'll be in the tech industry. But especially with this AI, like now I don't even know if that's like the right path either. So, what is your like whole holistic view of the tech industry? And if a young adult wants to get started, what's your advice to them?
Yeah, I would have agreed with you. I mean, a few years ago, I would have said, things like coding or creative skills, right? Like, offer you sort of limitless job security, and that's changed so rapidly. So, kind of goes to say that, tech industry is just is really dynamic as an industry in a space. But yeah, I mean, I think my general advice to people who've always like who want to get into tech is just sort of exposing yourself really early to the industry, in different formats, whether that's just learning, reading up, listening to podcasts, things of that nature, is sort of like as an entry point. But primarily, like what I would say is, if you're early in your career and you're looking for opportunities in tech, or you're excited about working in tech, I would say do it sooner rather than later, because a lot of people, I think, even myself, it's funny, I look back, like I worked in consulting, or some people like I should go work in banking, or I should go work in a different industry before making that jump to tech so I can learn some of those hard skills. And what I would say about, working in technology is that it's a space that is very dynamic and is changing rapidly. And, it's really like there's a lot of on the job training. And so, what I think is always important is just sort of like, getting your hands dirty, learning what it's like to work at a really fast paced early stage business or a later stage venture business. Those are going to be sort of invaluable for you to understand whether or not it's like an industry or space that you find exciting, whether there are roles that you think you want to do, whether you would want to run a company one day. And so, I'm always giving career advice to people who are like, oh, I want to break into tech. What should I do? I'm like, well, do it now. Cause when like I mentioned, like my first job in tech, I had 6 different roles over like 6 years. And I was just, the pace of learning there is really incredible because you're getting exposed to so many different things. And it's really the best way to kind of figure out if it's the right industry, for you. Um, and then for, like I was actually reading about this the other day. It was really interesting. There was like a dad on Twitter who said that he started like an e-commerce company with his son as like a hobby, and so they would like work on this over the weekends. They like built a website. They went and found a product in like China that they could source. They like packaged the things over the weekend and shipped them out. They were like promoting it on social media, and they were like starting a company together. And like that was the thing that they kind of worked on. And I thought that was like super interesting as like a way to you know introduce a kid, or introduce someone to the space as like, hey, is this something that you enjoy doing, being a founder, being an operator? Because you got to do everything. You got to take the trash out. You got to pack the boxes, really early. But also kind of learning some of those skills, those digital skills as well, those tech skills, about like, how to code a website, or, no code website, or how to put together copy, or, promote things on social media. So, yeah, I would just say, just jump in and learn as much as you can. And, there's tons of opportunities out there now, which is fantastic. But things change pretty rapidly, as you've seen. So better to kind of jump in early, and enjoy the ride.
It sounds like the best thing you could do is be a flexible person and not super rigid in kind of expectations and paths. I mean, that's certainly something I've noticed just standing from the outside looking at my friends in tech is like, I'm a pretty type A person, and the flexibility that you need to have in tech seems, you need to be able to roll with the punches and be, what's the word I want to look for?
Resilient.
Resilient. You need to be a resilient person. Thank you. That can see opportunity when it comes along, and then also not get discouraged when you're in the thick of it. So, resilient kids.
As I say,
That
the
is who tech
the highs
needs.
are high, the lows are low, but all in, it's a really rewarding industry and career. So, and of course, people want to learn, they can always reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to them about the space. So yeah.
So, all right. So to conclude, what is your favorite family tradition and why?
Aha.
And marrying into our family can't be, the one, even though I know that's your favorite.
It's actually a tradition that I'm trying to force onto to your family, which is every Christmas, we do stockings, but like not just sort of like random knickknacks. It's like the stockings are like overblown. They're like overfilling. They're funny gag gifts. There's really cool, fun gifts. There's useful gifts. Everything. And stockings on Christmas morning were always like the like almost the most fun part of Christmas. And it was not only coming up with the ideas to put in them, but also to open them. And so as you're well aware, every Christmas now I'm trying to force stockings onto the Sullivan and Mistretta family, and we're
Yeah, I
getting there.
do.
We're
We are. I love it. I feel like we haven't gotten there where like our family still forgets to
yeah,
reciprocate because we just forget about it. But then we get your stockings. We're like, oh man, this is awesome. We got to do this.
yeah,
So maybe next year we'll get our act together.
yeah.
And I still use the car
The
vacuum.
car
Like,
vacuum or the head scratcher, like yeah,
yeah. Yeah, they're all, I love
yeah,
them. I love them. No, it's so good. Well, thank you for taking time out of your very busy tech day to chat with
of
me.
course.
I appreciate it. And I'll see you in a couple of days for Easter.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
All right.
See ya.
Talk to you later. Bye.